we were all working musicians for the better part of the last 10, 12 years, and my brother and I guess a couple of years ago, we had both come off the road kind of around the same time. We were out with different people, and we had a hankering to do some brother hang, and so the band started by just writing some songs together just for an excuse to visit, and we had written the first 2 or 3 songs and kind of decided that we liked where it was going, so why don't we book some shows? And before we knew it, we were recording a record, and then before we knew that, we had a record deal, and we had agents, and so kind of like, I'm sure my brother would tell it differently because he's the administrator, but from my perspective, the band just sort of grew its own legs. And these 2 guys, we've been playing with them since Ryan and I did our first set of shows together when he was 12 and I was 14. So although we're not biologically family, we've been playing together for a long enough time. And Dave and Ariel as well were in their first bands together, and Ariel and I have known each other, I think actually, forever. So it was a pretty natural progression when it was like, well, I guess, these songs really need a band, so I guess we better call Ryan and Ariel. So
the advantages of being brothers in a band, there's a thing that happens when your voices have the same DNA. And that's actually one of the first sort of aha moments we had, was listening back to some early demos that Joey and I had done and realizing, that sounds like you, that sounds like you. And these voices go together. It's not so bad. It's taken a long time to really learn how to sing together well, but we have a bit of an advantage there. And there's, maybe it's a double-edged sword, but because we're brothers, we don't really pull out any stops, and we communicate fairly directly. Now, in my mind, that's an advantage because you can kind of just work through stuff really quickly. But maybe these guys have a different perspective.
I was going to say exactly that there's communication is pretty transparent, and that works for and against us pretty consistently.
In plain spoken English, we can be really mean to each other, and we can take it fairly well. So Dave can say something that might crush somebody else's world to me, and I'll just, whatever. Well, initially, the first 9 songs that we recorded for the Canadian release were done, we did bass, drums, and guitar all together, and most of my guitars ended up getting replaced, and overdub vocals and other instruments and stuff like that. But there's 2 songs that got added to the American release, Made Up Mind and I Am the Fool, and those ones came out of the gate very close to live off the floor as we've ever done. So we're kind of changing our process, and I think that came from before we had toured at all. We made the record before we hit the road, and then we went out on the road and developed a much more cohesive band thing. And so when we went into the studio for the second time to track those tunes, it came out a lot easier. And I imagine the next time we sit down to record, there'll be other little surprises there waiting for us. But yeah, so it's been a progression.
We're on the road right now, and we're gonna continue touring our butts off. We've got about 40 dates coming up over the next couple of months in the States, which takes us to the summer, and then we're doing festivals all summer. We're gonna head out to Europe in August. We're gonna go to do a festival in Denmark, which is gonna be really cool. Hop over the pond, and then touring out through the rest of the year. So we're out on the road. We're pushing it pretty hard. And yeah, that's gonna be fairly time consuming for us. It's just about getting out there and trying to get in front of as many people as we possibly can.
I didn't bring it on this tour, and it was my an old 60s Fender amp I always use, and I didn't bring it because it crashed on me right before we left, and I got really paranoid. I got it fixed. I was just too scared, and I think that's my piece. I'm missing it like crazy. Yeah. Thank you.
That's a long answer for me, but I think the short version is I've got a parts Strat Cootercaster that I got tuned down to open C that I play most of the night, and I think I could get by most gigs with just that thing plugged into a backline amp.
I've got a Fender P bass. It's my dad's bass. So he bought it brand new in 1980, and he was a touring musician while we were growing up, and that was his axe. And when I was about maybe 12 years old or something like that. He passed it on to me as a birthday present. So yeah, that's the one. If I have that bass, I don't care what I'm plugging into or anything else really. I feel as comfortable as I've ever felt on an instrument with that thing. It's got lots of mojo in it.
And I have a Zildjian 24 light ride cymbal that's probably coming up on 8 or 10 years old, and it's yeah, I've played around with a lot of ride cymbals before and since, and that's my staple. I feel pretty at home with that if I have that guy around.
Hey, we're the Brothers Landreth, and you're watching Grammy Pro.